This is For Advisors by Advisors. I'm your host, Evan J. Mayer, and today we have a very special guest, Mr. Corey Whalen. What's going on, Corey? How are you?
Not much. Pumped up by the round of applause. I didn't know we had a live audience in the back. So thanks for your thank you, everybody.
We do. And I don't pay them, believe it or not. They just come for free, which is great.
I love it.
Corey is one of the managing partners at Bridgemark Strategies. Been at Bridgemark now for 4 years.
4 years. Yeah.
4 years. They do comprehensive independent consulting for financial advisors and financial advisor firms. In short, they help recruit and they help get advisors to the right spot. That would be the better maybe way to say that. Welcome to the show.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I have a bunch of questions for you, but before we get started, tell us a little bit about your background, your history in the business. I saw you started with Lord Abbett, then you were with LPL, spent a little bit of time at Ameriprise, said I'm done with Ameriprise, and hopped into to Bridgemark. Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started off as a wholesaler in the Boston territory for about 3 years. Brought my wife from South Carolina up to New York, where I was stationed after. And I learned really quickly, you can't bring a Southern girl to the North. It was just colder and tougher. And she wanted to come back to her family. And a really close friend of mine was running recruiting at LPL Financial in Charlotte. And we made our way back here. So I recruited at LPL for almost 6 years to their RIA and corporate RIA channel. Helped almost 500 financial advisors explore that channel and go to one of the different opportunities inside of LPL. Then I made a move to Ameriprise, worked there for about 3 years. And as you get more experience as a recruiter, you learn a couple different things. Number one, you just learn the pros, the cons, the nuances of all of the different firms out there. But you also learn, making a move from one firm to another, that every firm believes they have the best culture, tools, capability, economics for a financial advisor. And as you just get a little bit more seasoned, I just wanted an opportunity where I wasn't just selling one product, one solution, and where I could just help financial advisors shop the whole marketplace and find the right firm for them instead of jamming a round peg of a practice into a square hole of a solution. And I helped a lot of advisors go independent. I finally decided to take some of my own medicine 4 years ago. It's the best move I ever made.
Excellent. Well, you were at LPL, which actually is a very good BD, very flexible, some of their solutions. I was on their platform for a little bit. I don't know if their technology is as good as some other firms, but on a cost comparison, they tend to be pretty well. You went to Ameriprise, which is always an interesting move because that seems to be a little bit more, what do we call that? Franchise more model, that you kind of got to stay in that Ameriprise model. You were there for 2 years. Did you notice a big dramatic shift from the LPL to the Ameriprise?
It was definitely a big culture shock for sure. I mean, LPL is just all about open architecture, optionality, multiple different technology suites. They really just allow you to do what you feel is right for your clients. And I'm not saying that Ameriprise wasn't, but it's very much a different platform. There's an employee platform and there's a franchise platform, and there's definitely solid pros, cons of that. But it was definitely a culture shock not having that full amount of open architecture for sure.
And now you're representing, like, I think I read on the website, I saw something about like 120 firms or you guys are contracted with to basically negotiate with. And obviously you can help people out on a straight consulting method if you wanted to as well. How has the business changed in 4 years? Again, I saw 10, 15 years ago, people were going to wirehouses, people were looking for checks, people were looking for big money. And then I've seen a recent dramatic move towards independence since COVID. And I've also seen a dramatic move towards the RIA channel alone. Where do you see the flow going, and how have you seen it change since you started?
So I'd say the flow isn't as much to independence and RIA as you think. What you see in the headlines and Advisor Hub and some of the other organizations out there that are covering the space, you see billion-dollar teams making a move to the RIA channel or independence, because that's much more exciting than someone that made a move from Merrill and made a move over to UBS. That's just, there's not as much to write about. There's not much emotion in that story. I would tell you that most conversations that I have start off with the advisor being very curious about the RIA channel and the independent channel, but very many times advisors still wind up going to some sort of other employee channel. Maybe it is another wirehouse, maybe it's an RBC, a Janney, a Raymond James on the employee side, but the interest in independence is there like it's never been there before. It's not as much about the upfront check, and a lot of financial advisors, especially younger financial advisors, are open to letting go of that big upfront check to have the longer term superior economics, to have the flexibility of a multi custodial platform and be able to create their client experience soup to nuts, building their own tech stack.
Why do you see that move though? Why the ones that are exploring the independence in the RIA, why do they end up going to the wirehouse? Is it the fear that they're just going to have too much responsibility with maybe handling their own OSJ stuff or creating the lease? And is it the lack of turnkey that they see out there, or is it just the ease of like, hey, it's just easier to go somewhere where everything's kind of covered? Why do you think that's happening?
So I think a lot of it is misconception. I think a lot of it is team dynamics, and a little bit is the turnkey part that we were talking about before. But in terms of misconceptions, when you've been told for 30 plus years by your branch manager, your regional director, that you need the brand to build your business, that if you leave, you're only going to bring 50% of your business with you, or if you go independent, you're going to be so busy inside of the business that you're not going to have time to go outside and grow your business, you kind of start to believe those things.
So it's them going to search for it and then finding out that it's not the right, it's actually all that stuff that was put into their head in the back that just keeps dragging them to say, even though this looks good, this is safer.
Well, I'd say that's one part of it. And then typically we're working with larger teams and there's team dynamics. Maybe there's a 45-year-old financial advisor that's part of the group and they have 20 plus years left in the business. There's a lot more runway for them to reap the benefits of independence. But maybe there's an older partner where they're 65 years old, they're 70 years old, they're happy. They don't want to go through a 6-month transition. They'd rather just sell directly to Merrill Lynch or Wells Fargo. And there's not as much upside for them to take advantage of. So there's a lot of internal conflict like that, especially with complex teams. People want to go in different directions. And then recently in the last 4 years, I mean, there's been a ton of turnkey options and independence where a firm will say, hey, I was a wirehouse advisor. I know all the fears and concerns. While you're still at Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley, Edward Jones, wherever it is, we're going to take down the office space. We're going to handle your payroll, build your website, build your brand, all of the things that you don't want to do. So day one, you could literally just cut the ribbon to your new independent office and you're off to the races. And the only thing you have to worry about is bringing over your clients. I think those are the things that have brought some of those really large teams over that would have never went over in the first place. But there still is a lot of employee to employee movement.
That makes sense. So I spoke to you about a year ago when we started the podcast, and actually your name came back up again. A friend of ours, Nick Nielsen, you were out to lunch with him, and right when he got done with lunch, he called me up. He's like, you got to get Corey on your podcast. He'd be great on there. So again, thanks for coming on. But you run your own, which I'm going to be on in about 20 minutes. And you're very big on LinkedIn. I see your videos. Some of my junior advisors that are part of my team here watch you, and they're like, hey, you're having Corey on. We know him. So you're getting a lot of name recognition for somebody that's only been in that game or in this game as far as recruitment goes for all the channels for 4 years. You're getting a lot of publicity. How is that helping? Do you see that as more of a, like for me with my podcast, it's never been about monetization or hitting specific numbers. It's just about having fun. And then other advisors that have joined my team obviously have looked me up from it. So it's probably added to that expectation. How are you finding that the podcast and the LinkedIn is helping you grow this part of your career?
I think it's helping quite a bit. I don't think there's a lot of places where financial advisors can really get unbiased education about making a transition. So if they're talking with an RIA recruiter, they're going to tell them that they're crazy to go to an independent broker dealer or a wirehouse. Look at all of the flexibility and technology and investments that you have over here. If you talk with an independent recruiter, they're saying you're crazy to go RIA. By the time you're dealing with all of the compliance and the tech stack and integrating everything, you don't even have time to build your business. And then the wirehouse guys, if you're having a conversation with them, they're saying, why would you go independent? You have everything turnkey here. You have an amazing brand, this international presence. There's no better place to be able to build your business where you can just go home and take care of your family after you're done servicing your clients during the day. So I just wanted a place where I could help financial advisors, as I said in the beginning, kind of weigh the pros, the cons, the nuances of all of these different opportunities, but more importantly, just hear from financial advisors that have made the leap before them and in a language that they understand, decipher what independence and RIA means and what it looks like to sell your practice. So I really enjoy doing it. I do it more for fun, just for anything else, just like you.
Well, I enjoy it. I spent a few days. You asked me about research and questions, and I said there are none. It's off the cuff, but I did some time watching some of what your content is. It's really excellent stuff. Let me ask you, I want advisors to be able to look under the hood. The issue that I've always had with dealing with recruiters is the conception that they're going to push me towards the channels or the companies that they have the best contractual agreements with or the closest relationships with. And obviously that's a very tough situation because even in our business, people look down upon people that charge management fees on AUM, or they charge a flat fee, or they charge commissions, and many advisors can actually argue the fact that how I'm compensated does not necessarily impact my fiduciary duty. And you have a fiduciary duty to your clients, the way I look at it, to find the advisors where they're going to be happiest. So when you're dealing with these 120 firms you deal with, and then obviously the RIA channel now really coming into play, and these contracts will give you 8% of the revenue of the advisor or whatever the different contracts that are out there, are they all pretty much even? Is there certain companies out there that are really paying you guys more to, and I'm not asking you to mention names. We're just wondering on a dynamic basis, even talking about competitors you have, not talking about you specifically in the business. Does each firm kind of offer different amounts for those advisors to recruit them over? And are the RIAs coming in with those same value propositions as well?
Yeah, I mean, so everyone pays around the same. Some firms will have maybe like a percentage point difference, or there'll be a little bit of difference from that standpoint. But at the end of the day, Evan, like, this is one of the most impactful decisions you're going to make in your life. I would never push someone in a wrong direction for $3,000 extra dollars. I mean, it's just like in your business, there's conflicts of interest anywhere. You can easily be selling every single one of your clients an annuity or a really expensive insurance contract, and you're probably not. You're walking them through the options, the pros, the cons, and helping them understand. I don't ever tell a financial advisor where to go. We start off with education of the overall marketplace, because most financial advisors don't really have a clear wish list of what they want. So we help them figure that out. From there, we'll curate a list of 4 or 5 options we think they should explore based on their wants, their needs, their goals, and explain why we think that is with like real concrete reasons. And then from there, we're not just leaving them. We're throughout the whole entire process. We're on the phone with them, the recruiter from Raymond James or whoever it is, and just helping them ask the questions along the way, 5 layers deeper than they can on the things that are really important to them. So they have the right information to make the decision themselves.
And the RIA channel, are they coming in with the same basic deals that the BDs are?
Yeah, I'd say they're very comparable. The introduction of private equity in the RIA business has allowed these RIAs to not only just attract more recruiters to work with them, but also, I mean, offer really attractive economic incentives for financial advisors in a channel where otherwise you wouldn't have gotten any money up front to make a transition to.
Let's hop into that for a second. There's a lot of private equity money running into these firms. And a lot of what I'm seeing on the recruitment end is not just recruiting to the firm, it's actually recruiting and then selling a portion of your book of business or your future income stream for shares in a private in either the private equity company or a special purpose vehicle or however they're structuring it. Number one, I've seen a tremendous amount of this change in the last year. Advisors Alliance actually out of LPL just started offering it. We just started seeing that get issued out, which is funny because I had their CEO on, I don't know, my 5th to 10th episode in. I forgot his name, but they didn't have that out there yet. And now they're bringing that out there. So are you seeing this happen dramatically Obviously, I look at it from one side, which is I'm a younger advisor. When I say younger, I'm in my 40s. I plan on being in the business for the next 20 years. I don't want to sell my future yet, but maybe it does work for these 50, 60, 70-year-old advisors that maybe are making the move. What do you see going on there? Do you see an upswing? And do you see there's advantages that maybe are not being talked about?
Yeah. So we could have like 4 different podcasts just on that one question right there. But first off, there's just a lot of there's a lot of firms out there that are offering equity. Typically in these organizations, there's a couple different principles. They recruit 200, 300 financial advisors. They sell, and a couple guys wind up getting rich. And a lot of financial advisors don't really like that. They feel like, hey, I helped you rise the tide of this organization, and I should be able to get compensated for that as well. So I do think a lot of financial advisors find that really attractive. The other thing going on out there is I think a lot of financial advisors think that in order to sell their business, they need to be out of the business and on the beach or on the golf course in 3 years. And that's very much not the case. Like anyone that's smart, that's buying practices, they want the secret sauce, you, the financial advisor, to stay on for as long as you want. So you basically kind of have 2 different options. You have the ability to sell your entire practice, become a W-2 employee, get equity in that organization, or you have the ability, if like for someone like you, Evan, you're young, you're growing, you have the ability to sell a minority portion of your practice, become a partner in that firm, get equity. You're still the CEO or the captain of your ship, and you continue to grow the other 70% of your business that you didn't sell. But it doesn't really make sense just as a monetization event most of the time. It needs to be a 1 + 1 = 3 scenario from a growth standpoint. Like maybe there's lead generation or marketing help, or they help you outsource some of the things that you don't want to do as a CEO of an organization every single day on top of that monetization event. Because like you said, you have a lot of room left to grow. And if they can't help you grow faster than you could on your own, it might not make sense.
Yeah, I would sense it doesn't. In the last 2 years, how many advisors that have moved percentage-wise were able to sell, meaning they were going to an or a hybrid, and they had that ability to sell a portion of their practice? What percentage did? And then how many advisors ended up choosing the wirehouse side, the bank side, and so on?
I haven't really seen anyone take the easy button and like go back to an employee channel. It's not easy to find the right person to buy your practice. There's a lot of things that go on. We talk about it in our decision-making process in recruiting and also in mergers and acquisitions. It's feel, fit, and financial. So the feel is, do you like the people? Do you trust them with your clients for the next 30 years? The fit is, do they run business the way that you do? If you're a stock picker and you're picking like all individual equities, that's not going to be a good fit for a lot of people. So it makes things like a little bit harder. And then also selling your business, the financials part of it. I mean, all of that needs to align as well. So it's a very long process. It's probably like a 6-month process. There's a lot of attorneys involved. There's a lot of outside influences involved. So a lot of these wind up not happening as quickly as they should. So I wouldn't say anyone like really hits the easy button, but I would say a lot of the deals, especially like a younger financial advisor, they'll go through the process. There's just a lot of friction. Maybe they don't find the perfect fit. And they're just like, you know what? I'm just going to continue to grow this thing on my own and wait for the right opportunity to come along. So I'd say probably like 10% of my deals wind up being some sort of mergers and acquisitions.
Got it. Okay, so it's a minority still, and you'll use it as a weapon if you need to use it as a weapon, because that's what they're looking for. As an example, if a 63-year-old wants to be out of the business in the next 5-6 years, and part of their move has to do with selling their portion, you're not going to necessarily back away from these private equity deals that are out there, but you're not necessarily telling everybody, hey, this is the next great thing, you should get into this.
Yeah, but we have the conversation like every single day, like a $3 million producing team. The father's the main producer. He wants his son to stay on. The son doesn't want to take on a $9 million liability on his balance sheet to buy his dad's practice. He doesn't have the collateral to be able to do that. So basically the senior advisor, the dad, needs to collateralize the sale of his own practice, like with his practice. And so he's basically paying interest like on his own practice. So we have a lot of conversations like that every day. We have a lot of conversations and introduce. It's just like one example of where we'll introduce like a minority sale to help the father exit and help the son carry on the legacy.
Do you see like there's a lot of father son, father daughter duos that are now obviously the average advisor's age is increasing so dramatically. I was golfing this weekend with a father and son, actually father one weekend, the son the following weekend, where the son is now incorporated into the business. The business is primarily transactional because the advisor is older and kind of going to be leaving the business. Do you find that transition, it used to be a pretty easy transition where a parent would retire, the child would take over and basically run the practice the same. But now that the dynamics of how we manage money has changed so dramatically over the last 10, 15, 20 years, are you guys seeing a little bit of a shift in how that's working out between the younger generation taking over for the parents, but also wanting to change the practice to make the practice a little bit more in today's era, for lack of a better word?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of solutions for that out there as well. First off, most financial advisors I speak to have a very solid amount of their practice in fee-based asset management, like more than 50%. Like very often do I still see like individual stock pickers and that have $500 million in management under management and like 500,000 in trailing 12 production. Like it's not, I don't really see that a lot, but yeah, absolutely. I mean,
I just to follow up on that question, is there a percentage of their revenue generated by fee where you start to go, why are we even going to look at a BD model? Like, I think we should look at an RIA model. Like if it's, if an advisor is doing 90 or 95% or 99% fee based, does it make sense to join a broker dealer, or do you normally suggest they look more towards the RIA space at that point?
I mean, so just going back to your question before around like not pushing anyone in like a different direction, we're giving them a bunch of different options. Like in that scenario, even if someone doesn't want to explore, I'll professionally push them to say, just take a look at the technology on the RIA side. Like have a conversation with one firm and just like see how it works. Like look at Black Diamond, look at Orion and compare it to these broker dealers and see if it's something that you're interested in. So every single financial advisor is different. They have different goals. They have different hot buttons. Maybe they don't have the trust in the RIA channel. They hear things like Bernie Madoff and they don't want to be, associated with something like that. All advisors have different preferences. And that's a big part of my job. And that's why we have 150 plus solutions. It's aligning them with the things that are most important to them.
Got it. And if you had to name like, I don't know, 5 things that advisors don't think about that they should think about when leaving their firms, and that could be everything to do from how to bring the book over properly to the ways you can market to asking the right things about payout. There's a lot of hidden fees as an example, and the percentage, sometimes people will go, well, I got offered 90%. And you go, well, did you really? Like, have you looked under the hood enough? What are 5 like key pieces of advice you would give to anybody looking to make the move?
Yeah. So the first one, I told you the decision-making process, like feel, fit, and financials that we help bring our clients through. I think too many financial advisors, even though maybe they try not to, they make a decision solely on financials. I just had a story with an advisor I worked with a couple of weeks ago, was working with a smaller firm, amazing culture, amazing technology, just like perfect alignment of fit. He was about to sign with them. And then all of a sudden, a firm called him and offered him like 2 times as much upfront money to make the transition. And he calls me up and he says, Corey, I think I'm about to go to this firm. And I helped just walk him through all the red flags. So, and it's going to go into some of the things that we were talking about. He wanted to market through social media. There's a huge difference of flexibility in independent broker dealers and like how they allow you to do what me and you were doing right now. Getting things approved first versus later, different steps you need to go through. Also, that upfront money, that extra 100% of money that he was going to get, he would have broke even in the next 2 years because the admin fees on like the fee-based business, they would have made, the broker dealer would have made their money back in 2 years, and then he would have a lower payout for the rest of his life. So it's really just things like that on the economic side. An advisor will get emotional thinking about getting a new lake house or paying off their house or paying for their kids' education, and they'll start ignoring really big red flags. So I'd say that's one really big thing. And then also on the other side, the feel. You don't want to make a decision totally on feel too. I think a lot of people make a decision based on they'll talk with Evan and they'll say, yeah, I love my broker dealer. You should come here. But your business might be completely different from theirs. And a couple small differences in their business could make your broker dealer not the best fit. Or they'll make a decision based on a branch manager or that their friend is over at a firm. And then all of a sudden in 2 years, that branch manager is gone and they have 8 more years left on their deal. We really try to help financial advisors just look on over the long term and make sure it's the firm's jobs to highlight the benefits of a firm. It's our job to help them ask the questions to figure out where the skeletons are in the closet, where the mistakes are, why they shouldn't join those firms so they can make a really smart decision. A lot of them.
Good.
A lot of the loans out there are 10 plus years now. I was just talking about this with our friend Nick Nielsen the other day. I recruited him to LPL 5 years ago. I sat in a part of rural like Charlotte, and I was like, man, like you live in the middle of nowhere. And I was just thinking in my head, like who lives here? And 5 years later, I have 2 kids, and I'm trying to make the best decision for him. And I live like 10 miles further out than he does in Charlotte, in an even more rural area. Like your wants, needs, and goals change so much, even in that time period. So like if you're gonna, I guess my biggest piece of advice is if you're going to sign in for like a 9-year, like make sure that you're just working with someone alongside you to understand what that means, how it impacts you, and what some of the downsides of that could be.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Let's talk about Wells Fargo for a quick second. They came out with their, I think it's Finite is their independent. Did I have the right name there? Is it?
Yeah, Finite.
Yeah, Finite. And they had a ton of advisors that were leaving to go to the Finite division. And then they put kind of a pause on that. And I don't know where that pause sits today. I don't know if that's still in suspension mode or not. From what I've heard, it's if your name's already in there that you've already applied for it, you can still do it, but I guess not accepting new ones. I had a feeling that all firms were going to eventually consider this because it was a way to make sure that they were keeping their advisors on this independent streak that's basically been happening over the last few years. Where do you see that going? Do you see that like that was a failed mistake and firms like UBS and Merrill and some of the other big wirehouses are going to say, you know what, we're not going to do that? Or do you see that as, hey, they saw the excitement on that, they saw their advisor retention, maybe they do bring that out with some of the big other firms that are out there?
Yeah, I don't think any of the other big 4 wirehouses have any plans of bringing out an independent channel anytime soon. I think they see like what's happening with Wells Fargo. We speak with a lot of advisors all the time. And I think something that started out like with Wachovia back in the day as a really great benefit to go employee. And as you get to critical mass, be able to make a move to independence. I think it's potentially turned into a pretty big profitability drain for Wells Fargo. We talk with advisors all the time that make the move from employee to independent, and then they're looking to make a move because at the end of the day, it's still the same wirehouse compliance. You're still using the same technology. You don't really have much more flexibility from a technology standpoint. So you're kind of in more of like a franchise model, I would say. And then those financial advisors still wind up making a move to an LPL or a Commonwealth or whatever it is, or an RIA.
And I'm guessing you would not suggest this, but my theory would be like if I was a Wells Fargo advisor and I had the ability to do that first before moving into a different firm, it just makes logical sense in the capacity of creating your own office and space. But I've also heard the contrary, like why would I make 2 moves instead of just making 1 move?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with the path of least resistance, right? If you can make the move to independence and still be there for your family and go to all your kids' soccer games and still be the coach during that 6 months, like that's awesome. But I think advisors just need to understand that you're still inside of like a wirehouse model. And it just depends on your confidence level of transitioning clients with the economics that are being offered out there today and the turnkey solutions that we were talking about before. Taking a lot of that stuff off of your plate could add a lot of time back into your day to make a transition not as strenuous.
For sure. Corey, really appreciate you having you on. For advisors that are out there that want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah. So my website is CoreyWhalen.com, WALEN. Corey is COREY. And my phone number is 908-902-3285. 4903.
And if you're not in the mood to reach Corey in the next week or two, but you want to check him out on LinkedIn, you search by your name and you'll find a lot of great content out there, Corey. Appreciate all you do for the community and for the advisor community out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate it. Big fan of your podcast.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much. Advisors too, our audience, we woke up this morning, we found out we had 1,000 downloads for last week, which was our best week ever. So thank you for all tuning in. Hopefully you comment and you subscribe, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one. Have a great day.